computer. We are now recording. All right, we're starting this off a little bit differently, y'all. I'm Jen here with The Bold Thing, and this is Living a Bold Life, episode 5. For those of you who may have tried to tune into this with my guest and I on Instagram Live, we had some quirks. We tried 3 times, and you know, the work that I'm about as a coach is not about forcing and pushing. It's about saying, okay, this is not working, so let's do it a different way. So my guest and I, Anne, we are on Zoom now, so we're still gonna bring it to you. So before I introduce Anne, let me just say, if anyone is new to the series, this is a series that's really meant to inspire. It's meant to empower. It's meant to just really get you present to the possibility that is abundant for everyone. You know, some of us, it may come easier with our circumstances, but this is available to everyone. And, you know, there's so much sharing of the highlight reel, where sometimes I think we just think like, oh, they're having it easy. They're getting everything they want. It's not taking work. They're not scared. And me and my guests know that's not true. So we're here to just kind of really share some of our experience with you, to take out. So without further ado, tonight's guest is Anne Hemingway. Welcome, Anne.
Hi.
How are you tonight, sister?
Doing good, doing good.
Anne has been a trooper. We've been dancing in the moment, if you will, trying to figure this all out. So before we get started with the actual interview, I just want to share who a little bit of who Anne is out in the world. Of course, we know a bio can never fully capture who a person is and what they're up to, but we'll do the best that we can with that. Anne Hemingway is an educator, attorney, and coach. She is a powerful and courageous creator who transformed her relationship to self and source. By embracing fears and obstacles as opportunities for growth, she has created an authentic life rich in love, light, laughter, and purpose. In doing so, she is able to empower others on their journeys. She brings her passion for transformation and beliefs rooted in the oneness of mankind to her connection with others and advocacy for justice and equality. How luscious. I love that.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Are you ready, sister?
I am. I'm ready.
All right. So this can be, I know, challenging, particularly if we've made a lot of courageous leaps. And we're going to have you on again when we can figure out the live snafu so you can get that experience. So if we just let you in this moment connect to what do you feel is the boldest, or, you know, I know for some of us, we might change that, you know, on a different day. So in this moment, if you were to share the boldest or one of the boldest moves you have ever made, what is the one that you would like to share with us tonight?
You know, it's I don't want to say it's funny. I've certainly had pretty bold moves throughout my life. But I would say one of the boldest, if not the boldest, is about 3 years ago. I quit. I resigned from my firm without any plan whatsoever. And with only, you know, not an infinite, I wasn't independently wealthy or anything like that, with a small savings, and chose to start creating my life. And that was a huge leap for me. That was actually when we started working together.
I was going to say, I remember that. And y'all, like, may I share something about that you didn't just share? So y'all, you know, Anne and I had just started working together, and it had been maybe about a month in, and Anne just shows up one day and she's like, I need you to hold me to something. And I'm like, okay, what? Or no, it was at the end of the call.
Yeah,
You were kind of like checking in, like to see how everything went. And you were, when I asked you if anything was missing from the call in complete disempowering, you said yes. I didn't say what there was to say. And so y'all, Anne did not have to tell on herself, right? Anne told on herself. And what she said was, Jen, I'm done. I'm gonna quit. And the date that Anne gave, it was coming up soon. And I remember, you know, like, okay, wow. And so, you know, I said, you know, just check in. Like, is this your possibility? Is this your truth? You know, do we need to slow it down and plan anymore? And, you know, I think Anne, I don't want to speak for you, but
yeah,
you were just so certain. No, it's time. You know, that it felt like you were channeling something else, but that is part of what you didn't share about your bold move. You told on
absolutely.
yourself. You didn't have
Yeah,
to.
yeah,
And, you know, you were just, it seemed like you were just channeling something bigger than you that was just, and you were like, I got to do it in this moment or I'm going to
yeah,
lose my guts.
yeah. And that's absolutely, I actually forgot that that's how it happens when I
Mm-hmm.
finally declared it. Now I'm the type of person who I tend to plan, not even realizing I'm planning, and over plan and prepare and then ask people's opinions on my plan or a decision that I made. So it's something I know that I had thought about it for a while, but not, and I know a career change or some type of move was one of my goals when we started, but it was in that moment, something within me was just like, now's the time. I don't need to know exactly what it's going to look like. The movement has to be quitting. Like I had to take that leap. And that certainly was it saying it, because I could have ended that and I was so close to getting off the call and saying, yes, everything's fine. We finished everything.
I remember
And
how
just,
I surprised I was.
yeah, yeah,
And I was like, this woman means business.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
the thing, right? Like you have to be radically honest in those conversations or, you know, coach can't hold you to anything. And, you know, so one more thing before we go to the next question that I want to really, one, I want to acknowledge your courage again.
thank you.
And two, I just want to point out, I like to kind of recap what you say that hits me for the listeners to hear again. And it was that you didn't have a ton of money saved up. You didn't have a plan. And the reason why I want to highlight that is a lot of us get stuck in the loop where we have to have a ton of money saved up. We have to have a plan. And sister, I so get it. Because a month into working with my first coach, I did the same thing as you. And I had no plan, no money,
Right,
nothing.
right.
So I can appreciate what it took for you to do that because I had a similar experience.
Yeah. And it's so scary.
And I felt the same, right? Like
Yeah.
when you said I knew I had to do it, like when you just kind of get into that momentum, it's almost like you get into this flow. And if you can just get into it, you can just travel down the stream with it.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is going to jump into any other questions, but it's funny. Once I made that declaration with you and I shared it with other people in my life who were surprisingly supportive, as I approached giving my resignation, people just started showing up and giving their opinions that I hadn't asked for, and absolutely a way out of quitting my job. Like logical, realistic, like just these things that, yes, it absolutely does not make sense to quit your job without having a plan or a ton of money, you know? And so I just wanted to add that piece that I easily, you know, it was like a week or two after our conversation that I actually gave my notice, and I had ample time to change my mind. Yeah.
And I love that you got that that support, right? Because what we know is if we have naysayers getting in our space when we're already nervous about it, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Definitely is.
And so again, you may have already answered this a little bit, but I found in each interview, when I ask the question again, people usually have a little bit more. So, and if there is more to share on the question, great. If not, we'll just keep moving.
Sure.
But for most of us, when when we go to take that leap, when we go to make that move, push comes to shove. You know, something kind of gets us up against it and we're like, okay, now's the time, right? Sink or swim. So is there anything else that you want to share in addition to what you've already shared that really was the thing that catalyzed you, where you were like, I'm doing it, it's time?
You know, no, I think also I was approaching my 3-year anniversary. Actually, my last day was my 3-year anniversary at the firm. So it just got, so I can't say other than having just this calling to do it and do it now. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I want to point this out to our listeners because what Anne just shared is what a lot of other guests, the 4 guests that I've had so far, everyone has mentioned a sense of intuition, if you will, a calling, where it sounds like for all of you, the calling was different, where it was so loud and so powerful that there was just something in it where you knew you could trust it almost.
Yeah. That's exactly what it was. And it wasn't calling me forth to something else. Like, certainly, it wasn't like you are now going to be a nurse, be a nurse. It
Right.
was within this move right now where I did not belong. And to grow, I needed to be elsewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and for anyone who is listening to this, who might be kind of up against something and you haven't experienced that feeling that Anne and the other guests have talked about yet, you might just have to get shoved up against it a little bit more to get the unworkability of it. And I think one thing that I just want to normalize is, for some people, when they get up against the comfort zone, particularly if there's been a lot of trauma or anxiety, the system can read the comfort zone the same as real trauma and danger.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be wildly beneficial for anyone who's had trauma and anxiety to really feel in and ask, am I really in danger? Am I really unsafe? Or is this just my comfort zone? And if you sense like, no, it's just my comfort zone, keep reminding yourself of that. And if you do kind of get stuck in the place where you do really feel like it's old trauma getting triggered, get some support, because you're probably going to need a little bit of healing and a little help with that. But keep separating the two, because I know a lot of clients, and myself included, it goes a long way to know, like, no, this is a different kind of danger, right? It's just hot stove danger.
Yeah. I'm about to tell myself again, Jen, because
I love it.
I'm thinking about a picture.
She's telling on herself while she's
Right?
with me.
What popped up in my head is I remember finding a picture that I took shortly before I gave my notice, or at least made the decision, where I had started. It must have been a before picture, like I'd started working out or something like that to kind of get more healthy. And I looked at it and I see it. And not only am I'm very, like maybe 50 pounds heavier than I am now. I just looked so sick. Like the energy force in me was just gone, like depleted. And as I think about that, my body was about to quit on me. Like, as I think back on it, my body was about to quit on me. It had enough. I had ignored it, that calling, the pull to leave, for far too long, that it was manifesting, it was appearing physically.
I'm glad you said that, and I remember that. And
Yeah.
Anne and listeners, Anne is the 4th out of 5 guests to actually mention that part of the catalyst was like extreme exhaustion, fatigue, like where you just you couldn't go on, right? It was unworkable.
Yeah.
Like the impact was clear.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
That'll kind of lead into another one of our questions later, where we can get a little bit more into that. So, what I have found is, for many of us, when we take that big scary leap, It's never as hard. Again, it gets a little bit easier each time. And so a lot of us, once we realize like, wow, I didn't die, nothing horrible happened, I'm still here, I'm creating, a lot of us will start to notice, particularly those of us who are working with coaches, therapists, just doing transformational work where we're in structures, we start to notice that we may have a secret formula, a series of things where we know like these are non-negotiable. Like I know to keep living a bold life, to keep doing this, I need X, Y, and Z. So Anne, for you, and formula might not be the word that you would use, but I think you know what I'm talking about. You and I have been rolling together for a while now.
Yeah.
And I love this because each of our guests have said very, very similar things, but they've all had their own nuances. And I think it's powerful. Because when we hear, okay, everyone's doing something similar, maybe I should try.
Right.
So for you, Anne, would you say, and let's just kind of go with what comes to you in the moment, because I know if you're anything like me, your formula might change as the seasons change. Your formula might change every year. So if we just kind of look at, anything you feel compelled to share in this moment, what is those formula of things where these are my non-negotiables to keep leaping, to keep trusting, to keep living a life of possibility?
Yeah, and that's great. A great question, and I actually like the way you phrase it as a formula, because it is, and that kind of indicates that it can change. It's fluid, in which it does. I would say that it's evolved, especially over the last 3 years that I've worked with you. But I would say, first and foremost, is to have those support. So as I began to take bigger leaps, or even just different kinds of leaps, I found that it was more important to have people in my life who could hold me up, and not in a, just in a support fashion that's there to cheer me on, like a cheerleader, encourage me, to acknowledge that it's scary, but hey, look at what you've done, right? Even someone that's going to say, when I'm trying to be tiny and small and think about all the things I haven't done or the goals I haven't reached, would just kind of give me a little gentle, loving smack upside the head and say, look are you kidding? Let's be real here. Now you're just playing a game, right? So those people, surrounding yourself with people who remind you of who you really are, and who can hold you to that. I'll say your highest self, because that's the way I view it, right? It's not your your fears, it's your highest self, where you're most authentic, honest, and true. So that is one of the biggest pieces to formula. But one of my non-negotiables is self-care. And that is fluid, like you said, throughout the season. So now, as we're getting into fall, and checking in with you, reminding me that fall is the heading into hibernations. Literally, the leaves are falling down, so that maybe my brain's a little scattered right now, and that's okay. Let me adjust my self-care plan to kind of fit what it is I need right now. So I've incorporated things to kind of make sure that I feel grounded and safe and secure, especially giving myself permission to take time when I need it. If that means by myself, or if it means with a loved one, whatever it looks like, I would give myself permission, let go of any guilt. Maybe I should be grading papers. Maybe I should be working on a case. But it's just as important or productive to be taking care of yourself, especially if you're going to take big, giant, bold leaps.
Yes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I love that. So, and you've actually, I'm pretty sure what you just shared. So y'all, I want you all to really pay attention here. The formula, while people haven't had every single thing the same, they've all mentioned support. All 5 guests have mentioned self-care. And it's not just, like what you said is specific, right? It's support of people who are going to hold you up and remind you who you are. Got a little stray hair. Not people who are going to be like, yeah, don't do that thing. You seem really stressed, like it's too much work. Or, just not reminding you of your power. That's so important.
Yeah.
And so we can see there too, like we need to take a look around and say, who are the people in my life?
Yeah.
And sometimes, y'all, let me just normalize this in case any of you are new to this work. Sometimes when you start transformation, your circle will change. It will change. There might be some grief around that, but it does change. Your vibe attracts your tribe. That's not just woo-woo. There's some science behind that stuff for real. Another thing I hear is self-care. And I love what you said, that it's fluid. So, listeners, if you are trying to force yourself with the same self-care plan year round, you are holding yourself back. You don't need the same thing all year. And I think a great analogy is, look at your plants. They don't need as much water right now. They don't need as much. You don't want to really repot them in the fall, right? You want to do it in the spring. My tropicals are not outdoors anymore. They're indoors because they'll get cold and they'll die. So what Anne's saying is, this is how we really get into tune with Mother Earth, Mother Nature, and flow. And I love a few things that you shared too, where it's spending time the way you need to, unapologetically. So big in our society, especially for women who are also mothers and in the workforce like you. You gave yourself permission. Y'all, usually the only one that's not getting permission from you is you. So give yourself permission. And I love that you mentioned the should. Because y'all, if you're buying into the should, you're shoulding on yourself. That's the shouldy. So no. Should means program.
Right.
That's beautiful. And I love that, because I think so many people still think that self-care is this luxury, and they don't actually get that to take a leap. If your system isn't flooded with self-care, that's going to affect your mental state, your emotional state, your bandwidth, your fear. Lack of self-care is like food for your fear monster. Wouldn't you say that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that not just season, that self-care can be fluid depending on what it is you're facing, right? Yeah. So if you're tackling things that are, one of the things that's happened to me in the last couple of years, that I had a huge move, and being uprooted from where I was living for most of my life really threatened my security, is what it felt like. And so at that time, I really needed to work with self-care items or plans that would kind of cater to making myself feel more secure and grounded, and safe.
Yes.
When I lost that huge piece, so it's keeping in mind that whatever it is you're facing, you're likely going to need to kind of adjust your self-care and your
yeah, thanks for normalizing that, right? Like I think, one thing maybe everyone is noticing in 2020, at least it's my hope. I hope that one thing 2020 has done has been to drop red flags, 2x4s, whatever we humans need to get the message that when it comes to caring for ourselves, we have to do better. Yeah. And to speak to what you said, I love what you said, because, and you're probably one of them, but all my clients, every single one of us, when COVID happened, when the rise against the racial inequality happened, when everything else just, continues to unravel, we are not going to get through this the same without self-care. And every client said, you know what? It's a lot to be with, but I'm doing way better than most of the people that I know. And the reason is, and I hate to even use the word circumstance for the things going on in the world, because they're freaking huge and significant. But, the work that we do is, how do we stay true to our being in the face of all of it? Because what we know is, when we're in our power, that's how we can serve humans and humanity and the planet.
Yeah.
You can't do it without self-care, right?
No, no, no. And that actually kind of speaks to just a little more of my formula, is to be challenging, because kind of what you're saying when you talk about being affected by a circumstance. Certainly, we're all affected by the things that go on in our lives, right? But it's whether we succumb to those obstacles and challenges and circumstances, and whether we allow that to direct and control how we are being in the world. And so allowing yourself, or actually encourage yourself to ask yourself questions, be inquisitive. Why am I so, like, whatever your emotional reaction is, angry about this, scared about this, sad about this, whatever it is, of course, feeling the feelings and then inquiring, I think is just as important, to kind of get out of that being stuck to whatever is going on in your world or your view.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's so important to share. That's a good one. So rich. Right. Are you ready for your next question,
Yes.
sister? Okay. And so this was something where you kind of spoke to it a little bit before, but my sense is there's a little bit more probably to go into.
Mm-hmm.
So what I also like to ask is, I ask each guest where you think you'd be if you didn't make the move. And the reason why is, I really want to make it clear to listeners that, there's nothing wrong with the way any of us are living, right? We are here on our own journey. And sometimes we do the bold thing and sometimes we don't. There's no judgment. It's okay. It's up to us. But what is true is, there's an impact to making the bold choice, and there's an impact to not making the bold choice, right? Always an impact. And so for you, Anne, if you did not take that leap 3+ years ago and quit your job, where do you think you would be left right now?
I'm sorry. Did I freeze or did you? I apologize.
Oh, that's okay.
I missed.
That's okay. I'll ask it again. I think everyone knows that with Zoom literally running the world right now, we have glitches on all videos these days.
A little bit of glitches.
So what I had asked was, I really want to paint the picture for people to know, like, whatever we choose is fine, right? Sometimes it's the bold thing and sometimes it's not. It's up to us. Mm-hmm. But what we know is, there's an impact when you make the choice and when you don't make the choice. And so what do you think would have transpired if you didn't take the leap 3+ years ago and get out of there, knowing that your life force was fading, your health was tough? Like, what do you think may have gone down if you didn't leap?
I would have, at that point, I had injured multiple parts of my body, like my whole left side, from my shoulder to my knee to my foot, was like, I injured it, and not crazy, but like tendon, ligament, that kind of stuff. So I either would have severely injured myself to take me out. I wouldn't be able to have worked. I think I was probably headed for a heart attack. Like, a lot of it was physical stuff, or some type of breakdown. I really think that my body would have just quit. It was like, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to make sure we do it. But I also would like to think at some point I would have still made that, had I not made that decision in June, that I would have made the decision at another point in time, right? Like, I'd like to think that that's what would happen. But as I think back on it, I think I probably would have gotten more sick, and that would have taken me out. And so, which isn't a powerful way to leave. It just isn't a powerful way to leave. It would have been a righteous way, Like, what can I do? There's nothing I can do about it.
Right.
I broke my leg. I can't travel for work, right? Or,
Yeah. Oh, I love that you're saying this, Anne, because y'all,
yeah.
what you got to get is if you want to make a change and you don't do it on your own, spirit, universe, God, whatever your word is,
Mm-hmm.
something's going to come in
Mm-hmm.
and it's either going to be on your terms
Right.
or on very different terms. What it reminds me of when I was in my coaching and leadership training, it was a lot of coaches really wanting to get out of corporate, right?
Yeah.
And you can get this, right? To go from
Yep.
like your cushy salary and being
Yep.
cared for to how am I going to get clients? What am I going to do? We just like you and I did. They were invited to make bold declarations, and any of them that did not leave on their own terms, they got laid off. They got fired. Sure enough, they fulfilled on the declaration, and we always laughed and we said, "Do it on your terms, or it's going to happen to you, not for you." Right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
And so, I think another thing that I really want to point out in what you just shared is this is where it's not easy for all of us, but we really to look at what's not right here, to look at what's out here and up here, it requires elevated thinking. And a lot of us, particularly in our culture, we just haven't really been trained to do that very well.
Right.
And so to really ask, what is the impact of my choice? Most people are going to say, oh, well, I have to stay because I need money, so I'm trapped. Well, you can see from this, you didn't have a plan. You didn't have a ton of money. And you are joining us from your office now. And so
Yes.
you're building your way.
Yeah. 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 And yes, and that's one of the hardest things is to kind of be open and willing to accept that you have no idea not only what it's going to look like and what you end up with, right, but what the path is. So where I am right now is just one step, and I know that. Would I be happy with what it is right now? Absolutely, right? But I know that I know that I have no idea what's next, but I know that it's big and I will follow it if it's right.
I love that.
That's one of the,
Because, we're so trained in our linear thinking, right? That what we don't really get is, if we try to even control the path too much, we significantly limit the divine power that's out there, where there are paths that you and I can't even fathom with our human minds, right? And
exactly.
so I'm a firm believer, and everyone listening, this happens in my own life, this happens with Anne, it happens with every single person I've ever worked with. When you take a bold leap, don't get attached to the result coming from the leap. The result could come in from here and here and here and here. Yeah. It's just about putting that energy out into the quantum field and letting it reorganize itself to figure out how it's going to show up in your life.
Yeah.
Isn't that true? Sometimes you'll do something and you're like, whoa, I got the gift and it totally came out of left field and hit me in the face because I thought it was going to come over here.
Absolutely. Like, I had no clue. When I quit my job, I had no clue what was going to happen. And so many things have happened from in 3 years. And I'm back at the school I graduated with teaching from it, right? So it's, I didn't expect that to happen, nor was it like, this is the goal I want,
Right.
It just evolved. So, yeah. I want to say that, like, bold leaps don't have to be huge. They really don't have to be quit your job huge, right?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes it's asking for help.
For some people, the bold thing is saying no. No, I can't.
Right. Yes. Yep.
No, my time is mine. Right. Absolutely. Everyone, soak that in. Soak it in. The bold thing is the bold thing if it feels bold to you. It doesn't have to be the leaps and the things like that. It can be anything. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. That's really important. And are you ready for one final question?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
this is always challenging, particularly because all my guests are just such wise beings. And again, this is a fun question because I know for me, I would probably give a different answer depending on the day of the week it was.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you were to leave our listeners with, in addition to all the sage wisdom you've already bestowed upon us, is there anything in your heart right now that you would feel compelled, a piece of sage wisdom to just really go out on?
One? Is that what you're saying?
You could sprinkle,
One,
you can
Jen?
do some popcorn, whatever you want, sister.
I would say, and the thing that's really, I'm not sure exactly where, it might have been from different sources that I gathered this, but the stronger the fear is that you have about a calling, about a thing that you're going to do, the more important it is you do it. The more growth you will have out of doing that thing, whether it's going on a date, whether it's taking a new job, whether it's quitting whatever it is, the more, because fear has a purpose to keep us nice and safe, but it's not always right, right? It's to keep us exactly where we are, comfortable, knowing how things are right now. And so the stronger that feeling is, I would say that the more important you do it. And as I say that, I'm thinking, keep in mind now, that's not about like your physical safety when you go out on that
Right,
date.
right. Yeah, yeah. Right.
Listen to your intuition.
Yeah, and like everyone, like keep making that distinction, right? Because when we
Yeah,
talk about your fear and just do it anyway, we're talking about your comfort zone. We're not talking about former trauma getting re-triggered.
right.
That's another ball game, and we take that very seriously here at the Bold Thing, and we do what it takes to work on that before the leaps. We got to care for our system and our stuff.
Right.
But I love what you said. Because I think a lot of us can interpret if there's more fear, it means I really shouldn't do that thing. Um,
Right.
and what you're actually sharing is it's an invitation.
Yeah. Yeah. It
And
means it's important for some reason. It's going to challenge um, um, some way of thinking or some belief you have about yourself that you might not be sure, right?
right,
And so even if it's not taking the action, it's being curious as to why you're fearful of that one thing. What is it that, what's underneath of it that your defense mechanism is trying to keep you safe from?
I
I think
love
my
that.
leap was fear of, I thought I was going to be homeless, right? And so, which is just
That
not
most people
ridiculous,
when
but
you kind of like, well, what would the worst case scenario be? For most people, it is I'll be alone. I'll be homeless. Mine was always it'll be me and the cats in the car. That was mine too.
right, right.
I get that, and I was like, yeah,
Yes, yes,
it's
yes.
not big enough for me and the cats. But
Right, right.
what I also want to just ping out with what you shared was, y'all, if you haven't noticed this yet, start noticing. But the thing that you're actually resisting, it persists and it gets bigger. So the
Hmm.
thing that you're not leaning into because of your fear, you're actually, again, that's fear food. Your fear monster is growing and you're feeding it. The
Right,
best way to kind of
right.
take the power away and then all of a sudden just see that inside of that big scary monster is probably just your little self, our little Anns and our little Jens.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
kind of what's at the core of it, and then they're just kind of left they're naked and hiding.
yeah,
That's usually really just what we expose,
yeah,
and then we get to go on and just be a little bit more free of that stuff and more in our essence.
yeah.
That was
Exactly.
beautiful.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for, I gotta say, I'm gonna give you and I a pat on the back.
Yes.
And
That was pretty.
I'm gonna get in here and clap. You see my
No,
clap
I
hands?
love it.
I'm clapping for us
Yeah.
because y'all, like what Ann and I demonstrated, I feel like is the work on a small scale, right?
Hmm.
We tried Instagram 3 times and it didn't work. We got on the phone, we made a plan. We moved it over here. You know, our being isn't all like wacky, like, oh no, it didn't happen as planned. We're like, well, man, that kind of sucks because we wanted to go live, but here we are. And we're still going to have the playback to everyone in the same format as usual. And the beauty of it is we're going to figure out what happened and we're going to get Anne back live at another time.
Live. Yes, yes, yes.
Right. So you stick around for a minute so we can say goodbye and I'll stop recording. Bye. Much love, everyone. Thank you for being here.